Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art Array, where we celebrate all forms of art. Books, movies, paintings. If it's art, I love it. Today, I have a very special guest, Brian Fatah Steele. He's the author of...
There's darkness in every room. Bleed away the sky.
Bleed away the sky. Like, I always remember it has something to do with the sky and bleeding. I just don't remember the order.
It's all good.
Anyways, he's published several different books in several different mediums, and that's really what we're going to talk about today. There's a lot of how-tos on how to write, how to draw, all these different things, but very few things really give you advice on what to do afterwards. And I know for me personally, even though writing was tough, and I definitely have those bad days, now that I'm in the marketing stage, trying to get out there, trying to get promoted, I feel like this is like a million times harder. What do you think, Brian?
Okay. Marketing. When it comes to marketing, it is problematic. I know when you self-publish, it's all on you. It's all on you. When you have with small indie publishers, they do what they can, but in some cases, it's one guy in his basement, and they don't have any money. I mean, they're spending their money on editors and book covers, so it'll still fall all on you. What is there in marketing? I mean, if you're with, a major company like Random House, or, maybe they'll throw money at you for book tours or, stuff in magazines. But honestly, it comes down to Twitter, Goodreads, BookBub, stuff like that. And you just have to put in, an hour or two every day.
Yeah. Does
it work? Sometimes it's just word of mouth and name recognition, who you know.
Yeah.
Interacting, if you are a horror author, interacting with the community is the best thing I can say. The more you interact with the community, with reviewers and other authors, and I would assume it's the same for whether you're romance, sci-fi, Western, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what I've been kind of learning, and like the advice I would really give with anybody. Like, even if you have a story that you kind of feel it is going to be able to reach a wide audience, I would still suggest trying to reach a smaller, more niche audience first. Because then once you have that audience and you do have a little bit of name recognition, then you're able to pull other people who maybe normally wouldn't read that genre, but they're like, well, it's a really popular horror story, it's a really popular fantasy story, whatever, and then you can kind of expand your audience over time. And that's actually what my goal is right now. Mine's a much darker story, so as opposed to just throwing it out there, I'm actually trying to develop some ways to specifically target people who are into darker stories, and then once I have them, then I'll kind of expand a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, it's reaching your target audience, I think, works better than trying to reach everyone. Because someone who's into, erotica isn't going to want to read a splatterpunk horror story. I mean, it's not going to work. And I'm familiar with what your book's about, and there's definitely a market for that. There's definitely a market for what I write, but it's a matter of reaching those readers, and that's where something like Twitter can work if you have the right followers, but that's where, finding the reading groups on Goodreads, like horror aficionados, spending the money on BookBub. There's groups on Facebook that sometimes work. It's difficult, but like I said, if you put the time in, there can be returns. I mean, some people are more successful at it than others. It's just, I don't know. I suppose there's an algorithm to it in some ways, but.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, like I say, at least to my understanding, when you went with the publisher, it was like Blood something. Like
Bloodshot Books.
Yeah. To my understanding, you don't really have to have an agent to submit to them. Like, you're able to just submit and everything. No? Like, no agent, or no, I'm wrong in what I'm saying?
No agent. Not at all.
Okay. So, see, I thought that was kind of a cool idea, because even the big publishers, once upon a time, you didn't need an agent, but since they got so overcrowded and everything, they're like, we got to find a way to weed some things out. So I think it's kind of cool that there are still publishers out there, of course they're smaller, but where you can just submit and you don't have to have an agent or already know somebody or whatever, and your story is just really judged based on its merit. So when you do that, though, what do they have in terms of like editors and like book designers? Do they have stuff like that, or do they just kind of take the stories as is?
Well, no. First of all, there's a lot small / indie horror. Those terms are interchangeable. There's tons of them. Bloodshot Books is a great one. I have a book with them. Sinister Grin Press, Alien Agenda Publishing, Crystal Lake, Journal Stone, Word Horde, Grindhouse. I mean, there's dozens of them out there that are making quality books. And most of the time they have a submission period. I'd say once a year, sometimes twice a year, for 1 month, where you just throw your manuscripts to them. And the submissions, everyone has a different idea of what submissions should be in a manuscript, length, or what they want, thematically. And I know like Bloodshot. He only takes 10 books a year, and he'll get 500 submissions. So he has to whittle it down to what he really likes. But then he does all the editing himself. He's a teacher. He has a good grasp on spelling, punctuation, and grammar. And most of these places, they either do their own editing in-house, or they hire an outside editor, someone like Aaron Sweet Amahari. And then they hire different cover artists, people like Don Noble, Matthew Reaver, Daniel Serra. And, these are really famous people in the industry who come in and they do the cover art for whatever it costs, whatever the editors cost. And the price is usually, it's a 50-50 split on royalties for ebooks and paperbacks. No one does hardbacks except for like big gun people like Thunderstorm. And it just, I don't know. It's a really good business model as long as you can sustain it.
One of my fears, and maybe you could elaborate on this a little bit, as far as going with a traditional publisher, because that was my original plan, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna have to deal with an editor. And my problem with that, it wasn't the typical like, they're gonna cut things or whatever. It's just, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I know you said you already know, but just for anyone who doesn't, like, it's essentially the devil's interpretation of how she was kicked out of hell. And she doesn't just become evil right away. It's kind of like a slow progression. Like, she feels this pain of being separated from God, and then she finds out that consuming souls kind of eases that pain, and then but the more evil she's consuming, the more evil she's becoming, and the more desperate she becomes. And it's like a slow progression type thing. And the way I wrote it was, I wrote it as if the devil was speaking to you. And pretty much everyone who's read the story in one way or another has told me that that's what makes it work. Because if you feel like an author is telling you a story and they're like, oh, maybe the devil isn't so bad, you're going to immediately reject that idea. Because you're like, what are you talking about? Of course the devil's bad. But if it feels like the devil is speaking to you, and it's kind of like, well, of course the devil's going to try to manipulate me or whatever. So it's really written the way she would speak. And the way we speak and the way we write isn't always the same. A lot of times we'll phrase things a little differently when we speak, or we'll put emphasis on words that normally wouldn't be emphasized, like I did just there. Or, they put these pauses, for dramatic effect. So I'm not saying my story is like horribly with grammar or anything, but there are certain spots where it's not really grammatically correct because I wanted to write it the way she was speaking. And I was really worried that an editor wasn't going to let me get away with that because I'm a first-time author. So what do you think? How did you have difficulty with any of your editors, or were they pretty open to suggestion like, oh, this is the way it's supposed to be?
Like I said, when it comes to novels, I've had 2 editors so far, and I literally just today got a novel back with an editor.
Okay.
But then I've worked with at least a dozen short stories with editors too. I've never had an editor really chop on content.
Okay.
I just never have had I've heard horror stories. Definitely have heard horror stories of people who have had editors who just, the legendary red pen just across entire paragraphs. But I've worked with, I don't remember the name of the lady I worked with at Sinister Grin. I worked with Pete Pete Kale with Bloodshot. I'm about to work with Aaron Sweet Al-Mahari for Alien Agenda. And then I work with just tons of people on short stories for anthologies over the years. And none of them, it's almost always SPAG, spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Nobody ever is like, oh, I don't, this isn't bad. You have to rewrite this entire thing. No one's ever given me problems, given me grief with that. I have my own editor. My own editor who I send stuff to before I send it even to be submitted.
Oh,
and
okay.
He'll definitely be like, nope, and X stuff out. But he understands my work, and he's more willing to be like, you just need to, expand on this, or this character won't do that. And I accept it from him because I can just be like, no, that's stupid. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. So I don't know. Once again, I've heard bad stuff though. I think it just depends on what you want and the editor you get.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, I was never really worried about the content. It was just the grammar thing. Like I was kind of worried, like, okay, are they going to understand that this is kind of essential for the story to work? That was my fear. And again, maybe I would have gotten lucky, but I know I was pretty worried about that.
And a lot of the time, and every editor I've worked with has always been like, if you don't want to change it, don't change it. Like I've never had an editor who's also been like steadfast and you will change this or we won't publish it. Never had that. Really.
Okay. So, I mean, I would imagine too that at least part of that, like, it would probably be different with a bigger publisher. Because I noticed most things like on the smaller levels, like because I know like even with actors, like a lot of times if they want to do different types of roles, like you'll see them do a lot of indie films because they're more willing to kind of take chances and let people expand and things like that. So that's probably I actually was unaware of what you did as far as like the smaller publishers that would accept submissions. I was aware of self-publishing and I was aware of traditional publishing, and that was it. So I kind of went the self-publishing route mainly because of that, and then also a big part of it too was just all the agents I was contacting. I think it was bad timing because when I was first trying to get this story out there, it was at the time when the last Hunger Games movie had just come out. And I had like about 4 or 5 agents tell me like, hey, this sounds like a really great idea, but right now I'm only doing romance or young adult. Like the young adult thing was pretty big and they wanted that. So I kind of thought, this isn't the right time to go through a big publisher. So I just decided to use self-publishing because of that.
And don't get me wrong, there are definitely trends, even in the small press horror community. Like right now, it's all coming of age horror because everybody's hyped up on it and Stranger Things. I mean, I know a bunch of publishers took a crap ton of coming of age horror because of the hype around those two properties. I hate kids. I don't want to write about 13-year-olds. I want nothing. I didn't want to read about 13-year-olds when I was 13.
Yeah.
Let alone write about 13-year-olds now that I'm 41. That doesn't interest me. I'm not. I don't know. But it's popular, and that's that's just like there was a zombie craze. There's always trends.
Yeah.
But it's not as bad. It's not people. When you come to the big five, agents just won't look at your work. Mm-hmm. And in the small indie press scene, people are still going to look at your work and publish it if it's good. I mean, that's not a thing. And I highly recommend, because people like Tim Wagner and Hunter Shea and Jonathan Jans, they all started in indie small press. Mm-hmm. And now they're with Flame Tree, and Flame Tree is like an imprint of, I don't know, one of the big companies, and they're making, good money getting these big, books published. And small indie can be a stepping stone to bigger, big titles, more money. I mean, Josh Mallerman, who wrote Bird Box, that was turned into a Netflix film.
Yeah.
He started out doing as far as I understand, he started out in indie publishing.
Yeah.
Before he got, signed to bigger stuff. I could be wrong on that. Don't hold me to it. But I mean, he was at Scares the Care just like everybody else. Like the regular indie horror guys. And there's something to be said for the middle level. I mean, I still self-publish. I still support self-publishing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hate formatting. I hate formatting for ebook and paperback. Uh-huh. That is the one reason I would rather go with a publisher. Honestly. Otherwise, I would self-publish more.
It's funny because I've been struggling for quite a while. Like, the book has been out for, I think, close to 2 years now, and I really haven't had any other ideas. And like for a long time, I really just felt like drained, and I was like, did I put everything I had into that book? Because I just felt like it was just all gone. But I've actually recently thought of a new idea that I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with, so I'm pretty excited about that. I would tell people the title, but I'm notorious for changing my titles. Like everything I've done, like my first movie and then this book, each went through more than 5 title changes throughout the whole thing. Like my sister, she gives me crap about it all the time. She's like, I can never remember what your book's called because it went through so many different changes. And she's like, is this that one? And like, whatever happened to that story? It's like, oh no, it's the same story that I put out there. It's just a different title now. And she's like, I can't keep up with it. It's pretty funny.
No, I feel you. That's totally. Yeah, I'm notorious for that as well. So. Titles are a big thing to me because I don't like one word titles that are just generic. I don't like titles that have been used, 14 times before. I like lyrical kind of titles that are almost abstract, and I agonize over title choices. So.
Yeah.
But no, I really think that I'm a big proponent of small indie press. Like I said, I would do more self-publishing, but formatting is the worst. Marketing, I don't mind. I could sit there on social media for 3-4 hours a day, and that's, it's a pain, but I'll do it. I'll send out reviews to some of the big review sites and, cross fingers, hope that, they actually take it, let alone like me. BookBub's expensive, but I've heard really good things about what you can get back on BookBub. I was actually on Horror Aficionados on Goodreads. They were like, oh, it'll have all these people were going to read it. Nobody did.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 15,000 members. I got 14 reviews. So, I don't know. The marketing, I have the time to do, and I'm willing to do it. But that formatting. I remember just formatting Your Arms Around Entropy 7 times, and it still never came out right. I just gave up. I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. I don't care if the chapters aren't hyperlinked. I don't give a damn. I gave up on it. It's. I know other people out there who do very little marketing. I know people who I swear they're on social media 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
I don't think they get any more sales than me. I really don't.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go on.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say, and I think you've kind of hinted at this before, it's really just all about effectiveness. It's not about the amount of time. It's about the effectiveness and, how smart you're being about it and everything like that. And then backtracking just a tiny bit, with the titles, I agonize over the titles too, because especially when you're not a known author, that's a form of advertisement. Basically, all you have to sell your book is the title and the book cover itself. And I've always been a big fan that I think when someone reads the title of your book and looks at the cover, they should be able to at least have a general idea as far as what this story is about. And that's what I always try to do. And then I also like being unique as well. Like something I'm proud of as far as I've done a movie called Strangely Depicted. And then my book, My Soul Burned. There's no other products with that title. There's no other movies, books, or anything with those titles. So I like that. The fact that when I tell people to look for it, it's the only thing that comes up.
Yep.
So that I think that's a big plus side, again, especially when you're unknown. You want people to be able to find you as easily as possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm the only Brian Fatah Steele in the world.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that exists. And I said Brian Steele is an actor in Hollywood, so I had to use the middle name. But I am the only Brian Fatah Steele in the world, and I make sure before I title anything, I Google it to see if there's anything else titled by that. There's been a couple times I've had to change titles because here there's an album by some obscure band with the same, so I have to retitle something. But yeah, and then I am more particular about my cover art than I am my editing. If someone like, oh, we need to edit this and change this, okay, fine. But I will fight for my cover art. And that's partly because I went to school for fine arts and like I know aesthetics and color theory and all that garbage. But like that's the first, when you're scrolling through Amazon, and just a picture flies by with a title, that's what's got to grab them. That picture, that title. And I don't know. I'm a real big fan of like this whole postmodern kind of grunge style thing, like George Cotronis and my boy Don Noble do. I don't really like traditional horror painted covers. That's not me. I'm not into the retro thing. I know a lot of people are though, but it just doesn't really. I mean, I write like cosmic horror. I write very modern, loud horror. It just doesn't. It doesn't fit, But I agree with you. I think you have to have a cover and a title that's gonna, hit consumers when they come by, to make them go, oh, especially with ebooks. You got a few bucks to blow, and you're just scrolling through a whole bunch of $2.99 ebooks. Something's got to make them stop. And I wonder what that is. And hit on it.
Yeah.
So.
It's funny though too that you mentioned changing titles, because with My Soul Burned, at one point I was going to call it Everything Burns, and it's a quote in the book, and I really loved it, and I was like, oh, it's simple, it's catchy, but there actually is another book called Everything Burns, and it's about something completely different, but
cool.
Just the fact that it was the same title, I was like, I just want to be the only one, so I ended up changing it to My Soul Burned instead.
Yeah, and that's just, you're like, my idea's better. Yeah, no, I get it.
All right, so thank you again, Brian Fatah Steele, for being on the show. You've been a wonderful guest. Hopefully everyone learned something. Again, eventually I'm going to have some other types of artists, like actual drawers and musicians and things like that. But so far I've been focusing on books because that's what I'm doing. But again, hopefully this helps all you out, and we'll see you next time on The Art Array.
All right, take care.
Thank you.